Did you by any chance see his cameo at the end of The Fabelmans?
Yes, I did. It was the best part of the movie, frankly. I didn't like the movie. I didn't really like it at all. I thought it was overwrought, and it was Spielberg trying to bring back something. Spielberg hasn't made a decent movie in 20 years, I don't think. I really have no enthusiasm for most of his work, but the best part of it was The Fabelmans was Lynch's, I guess, impersonation of John Ford,
who also yelled at it. So I don't know.
I guess it was interesting, his theory of how to shoot a horizon or something like that. Always put it in the middle of the shot.
Like it does it wrong, and then he moves the camera. I kind of like that.
But I figure we can do this in order of his films, starting with Eraserhead.
Okay, now I will say my David Lynch filmography is a bit lacking. I'm like half, because he didn't make a ton of movies, and I'm probably like half of them I've seen. Okay, well I'll go. I guess I'll go by year. It would be Eraserhead, which is probably the most recent one I saw. I saw it the most recently. I didn't see Eraserhead until 3 years ago. And then let's see, Eraserhead, and then what is next movie? The Elephant Man, probably parts back in the day. Then it would have been Dune, and I saw that. And then Blue Velvet, I saw that on beta. Yeah.
Okay, and then after that is Wild at Heart.
Did not see it. Knew of it. Probably saw bits and pieces, but did not see it.
That's my least favorite of David Lynch movies, I'd say. Fire Walk with Me, or I'm sorry, Twin Peaks first, right?
Okay. Yeah, the Twin Peaks. I watched a show, but I didn't watch any of the Twin Peaks. Probably bits and pieces of Twin Peaks, but I didn't actually watch it in its entirety until the new Twin Peaks came up in 2017. So I just watched all of them, and I watched the movie. So I watched that. So okay, I watched that.
And all right, Lost Highway.
No,
that one I can talk about. It is one of my favorites, actually. What about The Straight Story? Did you see that one? That was
wanted to, but didn't. It's not only is it a G-rated movie, it's actually a Walt Disney Pictures presents a David Lynch.
But they didn't release it though on Blu-ray. It's so weird. It got like a very small DVD release, but not a Blu-ray. I had to get it. I got it on Blu-ray through an import. I got it as I think it might be a Mexican Blu-ray with English, just because it has the original English track. It was the only version of it I could find on Blu-ray. What about Mulholland Drive?
Mulholland Drive, yes. I guess like a VHS rental, and did not understand it.
Okay, Inland Empire, that's his final one.
No, did not see that.
Just watched that for the first time 3 days ago, I think.
It's on Max. It's like I've heard it's 3 hours long, and it's like shot on video, and it's really weird. That's what I know.
And then you saw the revival, the return, right?
And I do think that is his masterpiece. So great thing.
Episode 8. No, well, I want to preface this by saying the last week. Okay, you were the one who actually shared the news, and I didn't even know. You were like, you just messaged me out of nowhere. Should we do a show about? Should we do something about David Lynch? I'm like, oh no. And I immediately looked it up, and I saw that he had died. And so that was last Friday. He was 78 years old, and it was exactly what I thought it was. He died of emphysema. He was a smoker since the age of 8, and he had just quit 2 years previous.
Now, his health, was he pretty good until the end? And then he just went off, and then he just kind of keeled over? Was he really sick? Was he cancery?
According to the Wikipedia, it said that he was in ill health for about a year and a half already, and he required oxygen. My mother died that way. Well, my mother had emphysema, and she had to be on oxygen. But he had to be evacuated from his house because it was too near the fires. They put him in the hospital, and he actually died in the hospital. It's interesting. What we did, I decided to just put everything on hold and watch David Lynch movies for the week. So we watched the majority of his movies I actually do have on Blu-ray, and a good portion of them are Criterion. So, we started off with Eraserhead. And Eraserhead, I got that like a few years ago, and it's a really fantastic. I mean, Criterion actually, he did this very nice, he worked with them to find the best versions of his movies. And also, he left calibration instructions for viewers like us. on the screen in his menus. He say, this is the perfect way to watch it. Watch it this way. Calibrate your television to this. Here's a color chart. These are my colors. He does that all the way from Eraserhead, which is in black and white, to Mulholland Drive, which is his last Criterion. Well, I think it was his last one. And he also has calibration instructions for the viewer, for their TV, just like he did with projectionists in movie theaters. He would send them notes saying, this is how the blue should look, this is how the red should look, this is how the black should look.
Now, you find Eraserhead to be extremely disturbing, correct?
There's something about it. It's funny. It's my daughter's favorite. She loves this movie. She loves Eraserhead.
Like my thoughts on it are, and I know that I think you told me about that you were watching it and you were very disturbed by, especially near the end with the weird baby thing. And as I'm watching it, and I'm watching it like 3 years ago ish on HBO Max at the time, and I'm seeing it slightly differently than you, or at least I'm not disturbed by any of the disturbing things, because it's just making me think of David Lynch. This is his experimental film, and he's in full pretentious mode, and he's like, I think he's got the dark sense of humor where he's like, I'm gonna do the most fucked up thing, and I'm gonna really mess with people's head. So on that level, I was kind of laughing of like, how absurd is this gonna be? And that was what I kind of thought. I almost saw it as a comedy. I saw it as an extremely dark, I'm going to mess with people, I'm going to make people walk out of the theater kind of comedy. That's what I saw it as.
You saw it the same way Mel Brooks saw it. I have a little bit of him discussing with someone why he enjoyed Eraserhead so much. And he famously described Lynch as Jimmy Stewart from Mars. That was his description. Lynch
did not bring that he brought that kind of same style to the Elephant Man, but he did it with less, like much more integrity and kind of straight storytelling and like pathos and like that. He kind of tweaked it a little bit. It wasn't like Elephant Man was not a comedy at all.
You know what I think Mel Brooks was looking for? He really liked the cinematography of Eraserhead. He liked the black and white, and he liked, I think it was that the makeup. He made the makeup look good in Eraserhead on practically no money. The movie was financed in part by AFI and by Sissy Spacek and her husband Jack Fisk, whose sister Lynch was married to at the time, Mary Fisk. And they were huge proponents of the film, and Sissy Spacek even did production design. She helped with some of the casting, and she helped with some of the photography too. And Jack Fisk also designed part of Eraserhead as well. So he was able to. The makeup in Eraserhead is incredible to look at, because it was done for, like I said, it was done for no money, but he photographed it so well that I think Mel Brooks was like, he bought the rights to the Elephant Man story, and he was looking for a director, and he knew he wanted it to be in black and white, but he also knew that the makeup was going to be very difficult. So he looked up David Lynch and flew him out to London and screened the movie and screened Eraserhead with him, and he said, "Yeah, you got the job," and that's how he got it. It was like a stroke of luck. It was like even Lynch still didn't believe that Mel Brooks put so much faith in him to direct this movie.
Lynch did not do. I'm pretty sure they got some sort of proper makeup guy to do the makeup for Elephant Man. Like, they spent a little bit of money. He wasn't just doing his own makeup, was he?
That was probably the majority of it. The majority of the budget probably went to the makeup, because for the most part, there's no movie stars in it. The most well-known actor at the time was Anne Bancroft.
I actually knew about the Elephant Man before the movie was made, because they did a thing on In Search Of about it, and I think that I'm pretty sure they did a segment about that, so I kind of knew what the Elephant Man was. So when the movie came out, I kind of looked at it, I'm like, man, they kind of got, because on In Search Of, they'd have the actual pictures, and I'm like, man, they kind of got it pretty close, at least close enough for people to be disturbed by it.
You know what my part of the story was? My mother went and saw the movie when it was released. I was a baby. I was probably left with the babysitter, but she had a book, and I believe it was written by the character, the doctor, Dr. Treves, who was played by Anthony Hopkins. He wrote the book. She had it. I looked it up. I looked at the pictures, because there were pictures in it, of the real man, the real John Merrick, and I looked at his body and I was just, wow, I can't believe this. It was incredible that someone could be so born with such deformities and then to be treated the way he was.
I just realized, reminding me of a movie that I just saw, A Different Man. It's a new one. It's got this guy. He starts off deformed, and then he gets a surgery or something, and then his face falls off, and then he looks like Sebastian Stan. And then he's like an actor. It's kind of this weird. It's kind of David Lynch light. And then he bumps into a guy.
It seems that way, that all these movies now being made. Excuse me, a little watch. What's going on? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then he ends up bumping into this guy who sort of is. It's like this. It's a weird, absurd. It's almost like a comedy, but not really. And I don't quite understand what's going on. And you can probably look it up when you're done here. And then he meets this guy, and then this guy who actually is deformed. So it's like, Sebastian Stan, he starts off with like makeup where he looks all deformed, and then he has like some sort of medical thing, and then his face falls off, and then he looks normal. And then he meets this other guy who actually does have that condition. And I think that guy has like the same thing as the Elephant Man disease. Okay. He was also in, because he has a really messed up face. He was in this movie, the one with Scarlett Johansson, the Under the Skin, where she plays the alien. You seen that one?
Yeah, I saw that one. Jonathan Glazer directed that.
She meets this guy with a deformed face. It's the same guy.
Well, no, I was thinking of Rondo Hatton. Rondo Hatton was a man with a severely deformed face, and he was cast in movies from the 40s and 50s, usually as a monster. And he was a monster that you didn't have to put makeup on. You look up Rondo Hatton, and you'll see his what he looked like back then.
You have the Elephant Man disease.
No, he had like a form of gigantism. I want to say he had a really stretched out, elongated face. It was kind of unnatural looking.
And something you can put in at any part in this show probably. I remembered a David Lynch project that I don't think you remember, or at least you didn't mention. It was a very short-lived show. It was on ABC. It was around the Twin Peaks time. Either it was before or after. Maybe it was called On the Air. It was about this weird radio station, and it ran for like 4 episodes or something. It was really weird. But I remember I watched it. I remember.
The Elephant Man is another one that I have a Criterion Blu-ray of, and it's a movie I didn't want to watch. I didn't want to watch it this week because it's the one David Lynch movie that makes me cry, because there are some things that he added things to the script. Brooks said that he helped in every way. He helped with the makeup, he helped with the script, and he helped with the photography and all that. But there was something that he added to the script, and it had to do with Merrick's mother. And she has this wonderful little speech at the end when he dies about how there is no death and that we all live forever. And this was a job that Lynch got from Brooks, so he was respectful to the process, and I guess because of that, it's what leads to Dune.
Yeah, he thought he was gonna get a producer that was like, oh, here's my money, here's the money, here, go make your movie, and it was not the case. Now, from what I heard, he had a great time making it. It was like the post trying to cut it together, and then Dino De Laurentiis comes in and tells him what to do, and then takes it away from him. Well,
yeah, he spent 3 years on this thing, and the thing is, it wasn't. I mean, Dino got the rights in the 70s, and he had been trying to get the movie made. Like, I remember Jodorowsky wanted to make his own Dune.
And if you've seen that movie, the Jodorowsky Dune, that's a great movie of like what he was going to do, and it really would have been a flop if he made that movie.
Yeah, he was going in a completely purely filmmaking sense. It's interesting. Jodorowsky is very much like Lynch, because I was talking to Bronwyn about this because we were watching. Oh God, what we were watching? Mulholland. We were watching Mulholland Drive. Like I said, we went through the whole week of last week watching these movies. We watched, Eraserhead, and then we watched, because I didn't want to watch Elephant Man, and we went right to Dune, but we finished up with Mulholland Drive on Friday. And the thing about Lynch is, it's like he's writing a novel, but the novel is a movie. It's like it's completely a movie And it's interesting where he goes with Dune, because Dune is an adaptation. It's still, we may argue about this. I still prefer it to these two new movies that came out. To me, those two movies are unwatchable. They're 6 hours long, and they still.
I'm not gonna go that far, but what I will say, I understand. Like, I can watch those new Dune movies, and I can understand it's straight science fiction. It's very reverential, and if you hadn't seen the David Lynch, you'd probably think it was the best sci-fi movie ever made, maybe. But when you watch the original David Lynch Dune first, like we have because we're old, and I saw it in the theater. I saw it Christmas Day. I'm like 13. I'm a little fat kid in the uncomfortable seat, and it's a long movie, and I'm like, I don't get it. Okay,
I saw it in the theater too. My mother dragged me because she was a big Frank Herbert Dune fan, so she dragged me to see the movie, and I enjoyed it for what it was, actually. But even if I didn't get it then, I read the books 10 years later, and I got it.
I think of it as a flawed masterpiece. You can see the genius in there. Now, if you took, the only way we're ever going to get that director's cut, because there's the Alan Smithy TV cut.
Judas Booth.
Judas Booth. Yeah.
Judas Booth and Alan Smithy. Judas Booth was the pseudonym that Lynch picked for his writer credit. It's
like if somebody could take that footage, like his daughter was a director. Is a director.
A very talented director, Jennifer Chambers Lynch. She's a wonderful director. Even though Boxing Helena is kind of a melodramatic mess, I enjoy the movie for what it is.
Okay,
and she's worked on a bunch of TV shows too.
Unless it's in his will that nobody gets to mess with Dune, I think she could come in. You could take that footage. Maybe I do a better version of when they did the Superman 2 cut, but really clean up, work with the studio, work with the De Laurentiis people, because it's all just his kids now. So he's not, not to deal with that asshole.
Well, he wouldn't have that power, though. He wouldn't have the power to do that. Only De Laurentiis would have that power.
Well, maybe they can, make a deal. And
that was the big problem. That was the huge problem that Lynch had when he went and shot. He shot all the movie and everything, and then.
So would love to. I'm sure Universal would love to make money and sell 4K discs for way too much money of that. I'm like, come in and do an alternate version, because again, the cut down movie version, the theatrical version, is still pretty darn good. And I did a rewatch of that just recently, and I'm like, once you've seen it a few times, it's literally like it's exposition, especially at the beginning. It's exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump, so you know what's going on. So if you really pay attention,
plus there's also a lot of internal monologue. More than 75% of the script's dialogue is just voiceover that is just basically people thinking aloud.
Mm-hmm. And in a weird way, I was thinking like Kyle MacLachlan is almost like the companion to David Lynch. It's like David Lynch. He's like the toned down David Lynch. Like he's got the weird in there, but he can present himself as like a normal human being, where David Lynch can't.
Do you find it interesting that both Kyle MacLachlan and Sean Young were actually younger than Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya when they made this movie? They were actually younger than them, but they look older. They look more mature.
Well, everybody looked older then. It's just
Timothy as I call him, and Zendaya look like kids. They look like children. They look like teenagers. It's strange the way people age now. It's like we're getting younger.
I can't say.
Yes, this is the movie that introduces Kyle MacLachlan, who is, like Laura Dern, two of Lynch's muses. I think when he after Dune, after Wild at Heart, particularly, he saw them as being like his own voice. And Lynch is a fine actor too. He's appeared in his own stuff. He appears in Dune. It's a really great little cameo he's got there, because he's got his kind of voice going there, and he's like, the spice factory is about to be eaten by the worm. Can you help us? It's like that.
Yeah.
It's just he creates such a folksy image too. Whenever he's being interviewed, I have several interviews that are going to be interspersed throughout the show.
Where did he get? I feel like where did he get Kyle MacLachlan? I don't think he'd done anything Like, did he get him from some stage thing? He was just going. They were casting, and he was just sawing because he's from here technically. He's from Washington State, from like Yakima or something, Eastern Washington.
He's probably a complete amateur who might have had some experience, but there were suggestions, for other actors at the time. And he puts Kyle in the middle of an incredible cast. I mean, this is an all-star cast. Everybody, even the most underutilized performer, is well known. I mean, you've got Patrick Stewart, and you've got Sting, you've got Sean Young, you've got Dean Stockwell, Brad Dourif, Freddie Jones, Jurgen Prochnow, Francesca Annis, Max von Sydow, and Everett McGill. A lot of people that, and this is Lynch must be the nicest guy in the world because these people all work for him multiple times.
Was this movie completely taken away from him? Did he have any input past a certain point? Because again, I heard that he had a great time. They shot it in Mexico, to save on budget and everything. And then something happened.
I think they ran out of money. You can almost see where they kind of run out of money, because we have this whole incredible story, and the way everything is paced is perfect until we get to the final battles, because it's too long. I think that De Laurentiis wanted a movie that was going to be maximum 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I think he was going over. So
it comes out.
That's why the TV version is so interesting. I'd love to see a Blu-ray of the TV version, because when I watched that on the Universal Debut Network, they promised a 3-hour version of Dune, and like 4 hours with commercials, added all this footage. It was basically sloppy watercolor paintings, but it was very interesting to watch, because there were a couple of alternate shots and some scenes that go on a little bit longer, and that's Dino cutting basically, because he's the producer and he had final cut. Lynch didn't have final cut, and that was the thing he learned. Lynch in interview says, the one thing I learned from Dune was to always try to get final cut.
Yeah, but then he works with him again. He as a mea culpa, he lets him do Blue Velvet and lets him do whatever he wants.
Yeah, Dino financed Blue Velvet. I don't think Dino was angry. Dino's not a guy who gets angry. I mean, he wasn't a guy who got angry. He was just he was about big ambition. You can run, okay. Dino Laurentiis produced 3 science fiction movies. 4 if you want to count King Kong, but he produced Barbarella, he produced Flash Gordon, and he produced Dune. And the thing is, you could watch these in a triple feature. There's definitely something at play there. Maybe it's slightly cheesy.
Flash Gordon, Flash Gordon does not look like Dino went in and said, "You need to do this." Like that. That looks like a director movie. That looks like they left him alone, let him do this. Maybe that was why he did that with Dune. Because he's like, I made this movie, I made this science fiction movie, I left the director alone, and I got a flop, even though it's an awesome movie, but it was a flop, so somebody comes in, makes a long-ass movie, I'm going to cut it.
I think he might have run out of money. I mean, it might be just as simple as that. I don't remember after Dune, were there any other, I don't think there were any more big-budget movies that Dino De Laurentiis produced.
No, because here's what he did. He took, I don't know. I guess he almost ran like a scam factory or something, because all of his movies, he'd make a little bit of money from those Conan movies, and then he tried to take what little money he made, and then he tried to do De Laurentiis Entertainment Group.
Yeah, DEG. Yeah, I remember. You know what I remember most about that was Maximum Overdrive, the Stephen King movie. So moving on from Dune, you have Blue Velvet. Ooh, now Blue Velvet is another movie I watched. Maybe my favorite of the earlier Lynch. This is Lynch's opportunity to actually tell a story on his own terms. The first time. Because, Eraserhead, yes, fun, weird, experimental horror and comedy. But he didn't think it would probably go anywhere, so he was like, I'm just going to make the movie and see what happens, right? But he had, he had a lot of help from other people. And then Elephant Man is a kind of a job. He has to work for Mel Brooks. And then Dune is like a job. He has to work for Dino. And then Blue Velvet is finally his opportunity to tell a story on his own terms. This is probably the biggest, the most famous. I will share one story about Blue Velvet from when I was a kid. I wasn't allowed to see it. My mother went to see it on a date with someone. She was on a date, and she said it was like the first time she ever wanted to walk out on a movie. She thought it was the most disgusting, repulsive thing that she had ever seen in her life. It was like terrible or something. That was what she said.
That made you want to see it, though, probably.
Well, no, I mean, I knew about the movie because I knew about David Lynch.
But I know it deeply offended Roger Ebert.
Yes, I remember him being offended and saying that Lynch tortured Isabella Rossellini to make the movie, and it wasn't really like that at all.
It's a movie.
To hear Lynch talk about it, though, it's a piece of Americana, and it's all summed up in that beautiful shot at the beginning with the white picket fence.
Yeah.
And the slow pan down to the bugs under the grass, and I think that was the point of Blue Velvet right there.
I remember I watched it on beta, and I would have watched it because we're around the same age. So when it comes out, I'm like, we'll say like I'm renting it, so it probably comes out 86. So I'm probably 15. Watching it on beta, I'm like, this is weird. It's like, I guess in a weird way, like when things were really weird when I was a teenager, it just sort of went over me. Like I guess I wasn't evolved enough or mature enough to be disturbed by things, and it would just sort of be there. And I'm like, I don't quite get this. I think I get it. It's like, it's a movie. I'd have to do a rewatch. I was probably slightly bored, but I watched it anyway.
The way I see it, okay, it's like this combination of naivete and Kyle MacLachlan's character with the excesses and the horrible nature of Dennis Hopper's character. There is like this idyllic thing going on where you're in this small town that seems too perfect and too beautiful, and then you find out there's drugs, there's police corruption. He does this amateur detective work with Laura Dern, and I have to say Laura Dern is just incredible in the movie too. I've always liked her anyway, regardless of some later performances that she's done. But I've always thought she was wonderful, and to see them working together in this and solving a really lurid mystery, it's like Twin Peaks too, because when you look at Blue Velvet, it is very much a dry run, a variation on a theme that will eventually become Twin Peaks, where you have this beautiful idyllic place and terrible things going on under the surface.
I remember the parody of it with Dennis Hopper. He was on Saturday Night Live, and he did the Frank Booth character. And he did a couple things. He did one thing where he was hosting a party, and he was there with his like inflatable sex doll, and introducing it as his girlfriend. This is before there were real dolls. And then there was another thing where they did a game show called "What's That Smell?" with Frank Booth.
Yeah.
Smell and then
that was this was Dennis Hopper's comeback in this role.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out that you have some holdovers from Dune in this too. You have Dean Stockwell doing the wonderful Candy Clara Clown, he says, but it's actually In Dreams by Roy Orbison. Then you have Brad Dourif, and also Jack Nance shows up. Eraserhead shows up in nearly every one of these movies as well, and then would show up again in Twin Peaks. It's like, okay, this is like Hitchcock. It's like a Hitchcock movie, but the characters are even more naive than would be in a Hitchcock movie. But this is the closest I can see to any kind of Hitchcockian influence on a David Lynch movie.
It was a hit, wasn't it?
It made money. It was
as much as they did.
In terms of box office success, I think Wild at Heart might have been his most popular one, but I can check here. I mean, it made money. It didn't cost that much either. These are low budget. The budget for Blue Velvet was $6 million. Well, Dune had the bigger budget, but it did make it made a good amount of money at the box office, probably because it had a bigger release. But I'm curious about Wild at Heart here. Yeah, Wild at Heart made 14. You know, his movies didn't really make that much money, but they made enough to justify themselves.
I'm trying to think, like 86, 87. Yeah, okay. What would be his next one? Wild at Heart?
Wild at Heart comes next in the chronology. He had already shot Wild at Heart while he was developing Twin Peaks, and it was released around the time that Twin Peaks that first premiered. But Wild at Heart is the only. It's probably the only of the Lynch oeuvre, if you will, that I didn't really like it all that much, and I know why. 2 words. Nicolas Cage. I'm just not a fan of Nicolas Cage. I really am not. I love Laura Dern. I think she's wonderful. Willem Dafoe is great. I like the story, but I've never really liked Nicolas Cage, there's 2 movies I like of his: Raising Arizona and Vampire's Kiss, I think, and everything else I can do without. It's just sort of how I see it. There are a lot of actors that I really enjoy, but he's not one of them.
So basically, he taints the movie for you.
He does. Everything else about the movie I really enjoyed. I even enjoyed Cheryl Lee showing up as Glinda the Good Witch at the end. I loved all the Wizard of Oz allusions to the story that he was telling. And Diane Ladd is in the movie. Laura Dern's real life mother was in the movie as well.
The main reason I didn't see it was because I knew it was like a widescreen movie. It's like it was on HBO, it'd be on home video. I'm like, you know what? I was going through my sort of movie snob phase of like, well, if I can't watch it in letterbox format, I'm not going to watch it. So I just never ended up watching it. And from what I could tell, it was horribly truncated in that old pan and scan, because he really used that widescreen frame.
He does, yeah. He did actually shoot it in Panavision, so it is wider, more anamorphic. I have the Blu-ray. I don't have a Criterion version of it because they had a Blu-ray of it for like $5, so I snatched it up immediately a few years ago. So I mean, I have pretty much I think I have every damned Blu-ray of David Lynch. Wild at Heart was a huge hit for the MTV crowd because of the Chris Isaak video. You remember the song. They played an instrumental version of it, just like they played two instrumental versions of Chris Isaak songs for the Blue Velvet.
Is Chris Isaak in it?
No, he's not in that. He's in Fire Walk with Me, though.
Somebody plays Elvis in that, right?
In Wild at Heart, there is an Elvis, I think, but mainly I get that confused with True Romance, because in True Romance, remember, Val Kilmer plays Elvis, who's always talking to...
I'm mixing those up, okay.
To Christian Slater, I like you, Clarence, always have, always will. But that's, True Romance is kind of, Wild at Heart is like, okay, when I finally saw Badlands, the Terry Malick movie with Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, I understood that all these movies were kind of paying homage to it. Movies like Wild at Heart, True Romance,
Bonnie and Clyde,
Bonnie and Clyde. Well, no, Bonnie and Clyde came before, but they were gangsters. They were bank robbers. In Badlands was like a fictionalized version of Charles Starkweather and his girlfriend Carol Fugate, who went on a cross-country killing spree, and also Natural Born Killers. That's the other one. So it's. It sort of takes from that. But the thing about Wild at Heart is it makes them less criminals and more like victims or something along those lines. But it's stylized in that David Lynch way that I enjoy. Like I said, the only thing I really don't like about the movie is Nicolas Cage. He just makes it impossible for me to enjoy anything.
You don't like the Cage rage?
Not into that. He just doesn't... He does the same thing every movie, that's all. And these days he's gotten bigger and more over the top about it as well. Twin Peaks.
Yes.
You said that you had you had only seen it in bits and pieces, and then you watched the whole thing.
It was on, and I remember it was such a big deal for about like a month, and then it started to get weird, and it was what is the mystery? Who killed Laura Palmer? Then it's like ABC says you got to tell us who killed her. So then they tell you who killed her. Now, of course, just because they solved the mystery of who did it, then you find out the why, because it's like, okay, so Bob did it? The Bob guy? Or Bill? Or started with a B?
Well, it's a little more complicated than Bob. Bob is... This is how... Well, me and Regan had interpreted Bob as to be some kind of demon that possesses Leland Palmer, Laura's dad.
Yeah, and then when you get to the Twin Peaks the beginning thing, or the Twin Peaks the continue or whatever, the later one, you find out where Bob actually came from. And it was interesting. I thought that was so great about how, some of the actors, you have you have Bob, you have David Bowie, like they can't come back as they're dead. Or they're in the case of David Bowie, he's probably just sick when they shot this.
We are not going to talk about Judy.
Somehow he made it work. Even it's like, well, I can't get this guy, and I can't get this person's dead, this person's sick, and somehow he made it. He's like, okay, well, I can't have them. I'll make it weird, right. And I'll make it weird, and it'll make sense because I'm weird, and I loved how he did that. It all still made sense.
Did a fine job. I mean, the return was really quite good. I could have done without a couple of the Roadhouse scenes with all the musical talent because it almost felt like a variety show at that point. But I did enjoy. Once we finally get to Twin Peaks, and once we finally get to, Kyle MacLachlan, because the way the show ended, the mystery was solved, but they started adding in these subplots, and I think that was what Lynch's intention was all along. He didn't want it to just be about Laura Palmer. He wanted Laura Palmer's mystery to be at the heart of everything that was happening in the town, and then for us to branch out and create and have these interesting characters and have them get into situations. And they were right. They were actually right. Critics were right at the time in saying that Twin Peaks was going to change television. It took a little while, though. It took about 10 years, I would say, for Twin Peaks to actually have its influence in modern network television, because now everything is serialized to that point.
If you know that, and you probably know this, the original pilot movie, if you get alternate versions of that pilot movie, they solve the mystery. It's all solved. It's like a contained, self-contained movie where you get I've heard like the Japanese Laserdisc is the pilot movie, and he has a different ending where they find out who killed Laura Palmer, and then it's over.
I have it. I have the whole thing. I have a Blu-ray that has it's Twin Peaks. I forget what it's, the entire mystery or something, right? And it has the international pilot, which that's a thing too, because this was a phenomenon. I wrote about it a little bit for an article that's going to go up about alternate versions of movies. And when they made television movies back in the day, 70s, 80s, they added extra scenes and sold them as theatrical releases in other countries. So you would find made-for-TV movies with added scenes, sometimes with scenes of sex, nudity, and graphic violence that were added in.
I have Duel on Laserdisc, and it is the international version that's about 10 minutes longer because the TV movie was like 74 minutes. And it's I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's a little more stretched, and it's a real movie. Yeah.
They released it, and it made money. They would make, because, and you're thinking realistically, when you're thinking practically about this is Europe, this is Japan. They don't have our channels. So we can send them product they've never seen, and if they haven't seen it, it's new. They like Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park is an interesting one too. They re-edit the movie, they added a couple of scenes, they changed some of the music, and they sold it overseas as a theatrical movie, and they bought it because they loved Kiss and makeup in other countries. So it's like a separate movie. There are a couple other ones too, where they add scenes and they change things around. Some things are more violent than others. The one thing we never ripped open that we said we were going to talk about for years was Bad Ronald. I still have the DVD, and it's still wrapped in plastic.
So it's a great movie. We got to get to that. That's
waiting. A good obscure title. We should probably do that one.
Well, the only problem with that is, it's like I keep expecting, because it is a Warner archive, I keep expecting to show up like on Max or something, or hell, put that thing on Tubi. Everything's on Tubi. All those TV movies are on Tubi.
You would think. And it's so funny because I bought the DVD, and then a month later they released it on Blu-ray. So now there's a Blu-ray out there somewhere.
Yeah, get that fine.
It'll be interesting to see if it has added scenes, if it's possibly a longer version.
It's probably, if it says 74 minutes, it isn't, because they used to make we know TV movies as being like sort of 92, 96 minutes, and then it's 2 hours.
Whatever fills in a 2-hour time slot, but back then a movie was about an hour and 17 maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, we'll see. It would be, they did it in 90 minute TV movies. So
they could have like a half-hour show to fill up the network slot.
74, no, they'd be like 74, yeah, and then they put like on a new episode of Alice.
Just to keep you hooked on it.
Yeah.
So Twin Peaks did change TV. It was incredible. And now, I told you earlier that we're watching Lost. We're showing the TV show Lost to Regan, and she's loving it, actually, by the way.
Now, is she newly exposed to this, or does she know what happens?
She doesn't know what happens. This is all this is a first-time viewing experience for her, and every time I try to spoil it, she tells me to shut up. So she's watching it. And the thing about Lost, I just want to mention this: Lost owes a lot to David Lynch and Twin Peaks with its storytelling and how it did it.
It gets weird, but then they start explaining things eventually. Except
that is the problem. That's the one thing I keep mentioning. They keep explaining things, and the thing is, Lynch was very stubborn. He didn't want to explain anything. He wanted, and he still didn't want to explain anything. In the interview with Eraserhead, for Eraserhead that he did back in 1979, he says, "I don't want to explain things. If I explain things, people are just going to go with my explanation. I want people to look at my stuff and interpret it for themselves. If you see Eraserhead as a dream, it's a dream. If you see it as a nightmare, it's a nightmare. If you see it as reality, it's reality." He left it at that, and I prefer that, really.
Eraserhead felt like it was specifically made to be, you have your own interpretation, whereas, and I think Twin Peaks was too, but at the same time, when they do the Twin Peaks The Return, it's like, you don't exactly know what's going on, but as it goes on, everything pretty much is explained. It's like it's weird, but it's explained. He's like that perfect balance between it's weird and esoteric, but yet explained. Especially like mysteries that you didn't understand about the show are the original show are explained in the later one, and I'm like, thank you. And then he basically ties it up in a bow, and then at the very end he gives you a total David Lynch what the fuck, and I clapped. When that last shot, when she's like, they go to the house and she screams, and I'm like, thank you.
And the way the show ends is with Kyle MacLachlan eventually becoming possessed by Bob, and then that's what leads to the return later on, where we see we see two separate characters that are being played by Kyle MacLachlan. One is the spirit, I think, of Dale Cooper, inhabiting this character Dougie, and then we see also the physical form of Dale Cooper being inhabited by the demon that is Bob, and that's where this whole thing is about demon possession. And the thing is, he never tells you, but you sort of come up to that conclusion on your own. That was the thing that could be brilliant and wonderful about Lynch, but also frustrating about Lynch, is that a lot of people want to be told what things are. Not many people. There are very few people that kind of go and try to do the thinking or try to do the homework in their brain of what it is they watch. That's why I like rewatching, because every time I rewatch a David Lynch movie, I feel like I'm getting something new.
I know this skips over either one or two movies, but that's the way I felt about Mulholland Falls, where it's like...
I mean Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive, I'm sorry.
Mulholland Falls was Nick Nolte. Not a bad movie. No, we'll get to that. Don't worry. Right now we're hip deep in Fire Walk with Me in a second.
All right, and the thing is, I liked it because again, I watched it because I remember when it came up, we were like, what the fuck was this? we went Twin Peaks, and he went off kind of on sort of Twin Peaks off a tangent. But it's like when you watch the whole thing, it's great. It fits in. But if you're just like, hey, I'm going to go see Twin Peaks movie, and then you're like, what the fuck was that?
to watch it, actually, Fire Walk with Me, that's the next movie we watched. We did not, I skipped Wild at Heart because I don't care for it. Maybe I'll give it a rewatch at some point. Went right over to Fire Walk with Me. I would have to say, the only thing that I didn't like about Fire Walk with Me, probably, I enjoyed the Chris Isaak adventure with Kiefer Sutherland. I thought that was fantastic. And then The Ring, and him reaching for the ring and then suddenly disappearing, and then where does he go? And this ring is like it's a symbol of something. There are some missing pieces there, of course, and there's even part of the whole Twin Peaks entire mystery Blu-ray that I have also has a copy of Fire Walk with Me, but I also have a second copy of Fire Walk with Me from the Criterion Collection. On both discs there are these missing pieces, the little bits that he snipped out. Okay, this is what I came up with watching it again. Mm-hmm. Is that every time there's an answer, or every time there is something that isn't unusual about what's going on in the movie, he cuts it out. He keeps only the strange stuff. There is normal stuff in there, but you have to watch the separate thing called The Missing Pieces to get that whole story.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm a little fuzzy. Now, when that ring disappeared, doesn't that ring show up again in the later Twin Peaks show, like in some way? Or am I mistaken?
It shows up as a symbol because the symbol is like some kind of a bug, right? It's like a weird bug. What do you have any idea what the hell the gem is that ring is made of?
No idea. I'm I watched that stuff like this was 5 years ago.
You know, Bronwyn said it was some kind of a turquoise jade or something, but I thought it was very interesting, whatever it was. It winds up being a symbol for something. There's something inside this thing, the Black Lodge. And then there's the room, and it seems to be inside that room is where all these spirits are walking around. And Laura's in there, and Cooper is in there for a little bit. Some people go and you know, that's where the man from another place is, you know, Michael Anderson.
Yeah, and then they somehow
with this ring I thee wed, you know.
And don't they somehow like they can get out but they have to go through this other thing that goes into this apartment, and it's black and white, and then people get like cut up or something. And I remember like I think that was how it started, right? Like the new one, that's how it started. Like there was this weird
return. Yes, there was well, the return goes on with souls passing through space and then being reunited with either their bodies or someone else's bodies. That's the whole. I think that's the logic of Twin Peaks, is that it's about souls and demon possession and stuff like that. And there is a Diane. That was a wonderful thing, is that there is a Diane, and it isn't just an imaginary friend that Dale has conjured up.
Something popped into my head. Does the movie The Forbidden Zone fit into the David Lynch universe somehow? I feel like it does.
The Forbidden Zone, is that the one that Richard Elfman made?
Yes, it's black and white.
Danny Elfman did the music for it. I have that score. You know, that's such a bizarre. Well, the Forbidden Zone is kind of like it's ridiculous for me to say, but it's kind of over the top. You know, when you compare it to a Lynch movies are subdued yet over the top. The Forbidden Zone is just over the top for the sake of being over the top. I remember watching that one with all the weird wigs and stuff and all the crazy ass strange effects. We even watched a strange one today called Drop Dead Fred. Have you ever seen that one?
I saw it in the theater.
You saw that in the theater? Wow. Rick Mayall, Phoebe Cates?
Saw for free. Yes, I saw it for free though, so I was okay. No, my brother loves that movie. Everybody loves Rick Mayall, you know.
Yeah, Rick Mayall. But I'm watching the movie and I'm thinking this movie has serious tone issues because it doesn't know if it's telling a serious story or something goofy and absurd. It seemed like it was like destined for Tim Burton, kind of. It had a Tim Burton feel to it, but it wasn't as funny. It really wasn't. I didn't find it funny at all. I found it actually really kind of disturbing, even if Rick Mayall's trying to, you know, ham it up for the camera.
Well, I think it's like, I think a little kid, you need to kind of have a little kid brain or like a crazy person brain and really enjoy it.
Either way, not the best audience you want to have for your quirky little movie about an imaginary friend.
Reagan watched this one.
She watched it, but she thought it was incredibly stupid, though. But she thinks everything is stupid.
She's not the target audience. She's 18. She's not the target audience with this. This is a little kid movie.
She couldn't really understand, and I thought P.B. Case was just a wrong choice to play that part. It was just, they should have gotten somebody like, we settled on, I settled on like a Meg Ryan possibly, because we were thinking about the right age in the right time period. So we were thinking Meg Ryan. I was thinking Joan Cusack would have been perfect for the role. Ali Sheedy possibly, and one other person. Who was it? Oh, Mary Stuart Masterson, or maybe even Lori Petty. Somebody along those lines. But Phoebe Cates was completely wrong for the part.
The thing with Phoebe Cates is I think she's perfect because the whole thing was basically just a vehicle for Rick Mayall to do his Rick Mayall stuff. And
yeah, and he tries really hard. He does.
And then you have Phoebe Cates. You just need somebody kind of big-eyed to just sort of experience it.
Nowadays, yes, you could do that, but not with a woman, not with an actress in her 30s in her early 30s in 1989. It just, you have to have a certain type who
was in her mid-20s.
Well, she has to be scared of her mom. That's the thing. And I just don't buy Phoebe Cates in that kind of role. She just seems too confident and also they were putting all these frumpy dresses on her to make her look frumpy, and you know what that body looks like. God, we've seen that body. And it just doesn't fit. It doesn't quite fit for that role.
All I can say is Kevin Kline did good.
He did. You know, they were I always ran into them because they lived in the apartment building that my girlfriend at the time lived in. And also Madonna was a neighbor as well. Madonna, Phoebe Cates, Kevin Kline, they all lived on the Upper West Side around the corner from Central Park West. And they all lived in this building. So I would run into them occasionally. I was on my way out, they were on their way in. They were nice. They were actually very nice. You run into a lot of people in New York City. especially in the 90s. Yeah, let's talk about Lost Highway. You said you'd never seen it before.
I have not seen it. It's weird. Okay, so I was talking to my roommate about this, and he watched it, and I'm like, well, where is it? And he says it's on the streaming service Canopy. I could watch it if I could find, because Canopy is a thing where it's free, and all you have to do is put your library card information. I got a library card a while back. I can't find it, so I can't put it in there, and I'm too lazy to go like buy a DVD or anything. So I did not see it. I kind of wanted to watch it because I heard it's good.
This is another one that's ahead of its time when you think about it, because you have to watch it a couple of times to really get into it, which is a good David Lynch steak dinner. You gotta really cut into it to get the good meat. This is a metaverse story. This is a parallel universe story. Mm-hmm. And once you see it that way, it's hard to see it any other way. But it plays around with the idea of parallel universes, and it does it in a non-lazy way, like so many writers are doing today. To people who call themselves writers, they think they're being clever when they do this metaverse thing. And this was a movie that was so kind of obscure and stubborn and relentlessly stubborn in the storytelling. He had a very interesting story for why he was fascinated with it. I think he called it a psychogenic fugue, where someone can walk away from doing something absolutely terrible and become someone else. That's interesting too, because Robert Blake is in this movie. This is one of the last ones before he went to jail. And
he was acquitted, wasn't he?
No, he was not. He was not acquitted. He had hired someone to kill his wife.
I'm gonna look that up while you talk. I'm gonna look up, was Robert Blake acquitted? Now, he may have been in the holding cell for a while, but okay, was blank. I love Google.
Actually, Lynch was inspired by O.J. Simpson, the O.J. Simpson thing, and everything that happened. But he tells the story better than I do, which you will listen to when you hear this. But Bill Pullman plays a jazz musician. He is getting sent videotapes of him and his wife in bed at night. People are coming into his home and videotaping him. It's very strange. And then eventually he disappears, and then this Balthazar Getty character pops up and has a dalliance with a character also being played by Patricia Arquette. So there's a little bit, consider it like a kind of parallel universe story, but mixed in is a little bit of Vertigo, the Alfred Hitchcock movie. But it isn't a Hitchcockian story. This is completely David Lynch.
I have information for you from the internet. Robert Blake was acquitted of murdering his second wife.
How much time did he spend in jail, though?
Hey, I don't know. Probably. I don't know. Okay, I don't know about that. But let's say Blake was arrested for the murder. But he was acquitted of murder and solicitation of murder. However, Blake was found liable in a civil wrongful death lawsuit in order to pay $30 million to Blakely's children. So he did not serve time. I don't know how long he stayed in the holding cell, but he did not serve time, and he had to pay $30 million. God knows how much of that he paid.
He probably didn't have $30 million, but it's the same as the OJ rap. Basically, it's a way of saying you're guilty without actually making making you pay for it. So moving on from that, Lost Highway and Blake's character is really he's very much a David Lynch construction. He would have been, I think, if it wasn't Robert Blake, it would have been Michael Anderson. The person he always gets to play these strange parts.
Stockwell.
Oh, Dean Stockwell, you think?
Dean Stockwell. He could have probably done that too.
He probably could have, yeah. I mean, I find it very interesting. This was also one of Richard Pryor's last roles. Richard Pryor's in the movie.
Pryor's in it?
He plays I believe he plays the owner of he's like a mechanic or something.
What year is
he pops up? 97.
Oh shit, he was all fucked up then.
I think he was in a wheelchair, but for some reason he shows up in this movie, and it's wonderful to see. It's one of his last, probably his last, actually. He was very frail at the time, and he shows up in this movie. Maybe he's a fan, who knows? Maybe he reached out and was like, hey, put me in your movie. People think I'm dead.
Like, I know Richard Pryor's fucked up. Come be in my movie. And he's like, okay.
He's good. He gets a little bit of dialogue. Robert Loggia, of course, was in it, and a bunch of actors that I've always enjoyed. I even enjoy Bill Pullman. My wife's not a big Bill Pullman fan, but I like him in this. So we move on to The Straight Story. Had you ever seen this one?
I have not seen that. I wanted to. I have not seen.
for the purposes of this story. This is a very hard movie to find on Blu-ray, and the only way I could find it was in an international release.
This is a movie that should be on Disney Plus, though. When you think about it, it is a G-rated family film about.
It's completely harmless. It's a very sweet story.
Harmless, you know. And I'm like, this. It's a Disney movie. This should be on Disney Plus. I'm just saying.
This is a true story of a man who wants to see his brother, and his brother is ill. His brother in the movie is played by Harry Dean Stanton. Harry Dean Stanton, of course, shows up in most of these movies. He was in Wild at Heart, and then he was later in Twin Peaks. He was in Fire Walk with Me, and then he has such a wonderful scene in The Return where he's playing his guitar and he's singing, and he sees this child get run over by a car and get killed, and he sees the child's soul descend into heaven. I was just like, oh my God, this is visual poetry, and this is like that's another because I saw that I didn't get to see the Return until years later when I got Showtime again and I was able to watch it.
I got a brush with greatness story here. Okay, so you get the kid getting hit by the car. You got the screaming mom. I met the screaming mom because I auditioned for something here locally, and she is a local actress, and she was there for that. I think she's like the producer on it or something. So this is my brush with greatness.
Did you meet her after the fact or before?
No. I was. She was kind of part of the crew doing the auditions and everything, and I came in. This was like, and yeah. So it was like I just came in and did some lines, didn't get it, and that was it. So I'm just saying.
So you got to meet her, but she didn't scream though, right?
I didn't really meet her. I just sort of saw her. She was like a bunch of like people being judgy. That was it.
So I guess it was good that you didn't scream. That was the only other time watching a Lynch thing where I cried, because Harry Dean Stanton had already been dead by the time I saw this. In fact, all the people that were in this, it's so strange that they got to them right before they died. A bunch of people died. Catherine Coulson died, the log lady. Catherine Coulson was a set designer who worked with him from Eraserhead on, and he just cast her. He looked at her one day, he's like, I need a log lady. Catherine, say these lines.
The tall guy, the Carol Struyken,
yes.
Last thing,
Harry Dean, Robert Forster.
The dancing little person, was he? I can't remember. He'd already passed.
No. Michael Anderson. I'm not even sure if he's dead. Actually, I need to take a look. But I do know he had a falling out with Lynch for some reason I didn't understand. Maybe that's why he wasn't in it, because they made him that brain on top of the branch.
Yeah. I was thinking, yeah. I feel like he died before this because, like, you know.
Small person. No, he's still alive.
Shit.
He's 71 years old. He's 71 and he's 3'7". Do you know how rare that is for little people to live that long?
Yeah, it's a lot
That's
of health
amazing.
related to your size when things are jostled around in there. Yeah, it's weird. Interesting. I know that Sherilyn Fenn was in it. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, because you remember on Twin Peaks, she was like, she had like tied herself to a bomb or something that was going to go off. Something.
There was a bomb, there was an explosion, and then there was a weird scene where, you know, and then she shows up in The Return. In she did not appear in Fire Walk with Me, nor did Lara Flynn Boyle. Instead, Mara Kelly was cast in that part.
I think that was a scheduling issue than anything.
It might have been. I'm not really sure. I do know that Lara Flynn Boyle was involved with Kyle MacLachlan romantically, and then she dumped him for Jack Nicholson, which is kind of unusual when you think about that one.
Look, that was trading up, I gotta admit.
Very strange. So in the straight story is just he gets to work with Sissy Spacek, and Sissy Spacek is really great in the role. She plays a kind of she's slow of speech, you know, but she's not mentally retarded or anything. She's just slow of speech, but it's a great performance because it's a very unglamorous performance for her. But then she goes ahead and Richard Farnsworth. This is like his last role. And he was perfectly cast in the role, and he died. He also died right after that. Being in it, it's so unusual because maybe there's a rights issue with it. Maybe that's why it's not even on. Do you have Disney Plus?
Of course, I have Disney Plus.
It doesn't even show up there.
It's not showing up here. I'm gonna do a Google search and see, because usually if you do Google search on a movie, it'll show like where it's streaming. So I will look up the straight story, see where it is, if it's anywhere.
This is an extremely hard movie to find. I had to go digging for it to get it, to find it. You can't even find it anywhere.
1999. Oh shit! It is on Disney Plus. I guess I wasn't looking it up. It says where to watch Disney Plus.
It's saying where to watch. You need to go searching to see, because sometimes the where to watch isn't always accurate. If you can find it, that'd be great. Go ahead and watch it. I mean, it's a wonderful movie. It was shot by Freddie Francis too. He went back to Freddie Francis, I guess, because maybe who is it? Maybe Frederick Holmes wasn't available, but Freddie Francis went and shot The Elephant Man, and he was a great British director. Actually, he directed a bunch of British horror movies back in the 60s and 70s as well.
For all I know, they just put it up because of David Lynch and the whole thing. Like, hey, wait a minute, we own this movie.
It had only received a limited edition release from Imprint Films, and that went out of stock immediately. I had to find it from like the Mexican distributor of the movie put it out on Blu-ray, but they also were smart enough to put it out with an English-speaking version as well. So I was able to grab that.
Okay, I got it up here. It says it's in HD and 5.1 surround sound. It's a high quality. It'll be what you get on Blu-ray then.
Mm-hmm. Yep, probably they have it, but it'll remain to be seen how long it stays up. I don't know. Maybe they're putting it up because of Lynch's passing. So
look, they have the Black Cauldron on there. Nobody gives a shit. So okay,
that I would love to see. That's a movie I hadn't seen in years. Now let's move on. Let's talk about Mulholland Drive. This was intended to be a television show. The Mulholland Drive part of the movie was meant to be a pilot for ABC. ABC passed on it, so Lynch brought the actors back to shoot up all the scenes. Again, I think he was looking for a Twin Peaks style mystery that was about a place rather than people. And his focus was going to be a little bit on what we see in the movie as it was completed. And
turned it into a movie, because he turned it into a movie, it was way more David Lynch than he could have gotten away with on TV. And there's nudity, there's probably more violence in it, and it's just way over the top weird. Whereas he added a bunch of footage and made it to give it an R-rated theatrical release. Unfortunately, the movie really didn't do very well because it was released right after 9/11, and I think they had shot most of the pilot before then. They shot it in early 2001 or part of 2000. This is created the career of Naomi Watts, pretty much.
It was, yeah. What was she in? She was in a movie. Earlier than that, she had a very small part in Joe Dante's Matinee, where she's in a Disney movie about a shopping cart. It was like the wacky mixed up shopping cart or something.
It resurrected the career of the Hispanic woman, because she was like a star in like south of the border. She came up here and she did that Lambada movie, I remember. And
Laura Herring, you're talking about?
Yeah, she did.
She was in The Forbidden Dance. Yes, she was in The Forbidden Dance. She was in she wasn't. Yeah, according to her filmography, she was in Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Better watch out. Hey, how about that? 1989. And she was in The Forbidden Dance, and she was in Exit to Eden, Black Scorpion 2. She was in Little Nicky. Yeah, but yeah, she didn't really have much. It's kind of shocking to me because she's so gorgeous. My God, this woman is so beautiful.
I think she won like Miss Universe or something, and that's kind of what got her started. And then she got all these shit movie roles, and then she does a good movie, and then she's, she would pops up in things still.
The only other thing I remember seeing her in was The Punisher, the first one with Tom Jane and John Travolta, and I really enjoyed that movie quite a bit. She played John Travolta's wife. John Travolta was convinced that this guy was cheating. One of his henchmen was cheating with her. He kills him, and then she comes up and tells him he was gay, you idiot.
Willard. She was in Willard, I think. She was the object of affections. Yeah, the remake with Crispin Glover.
It was an okay remake. I prefer the original with Bruce Davison, but otherwise, yeah, it was a fine movie. She's just, wow, what a knockout she was, and she was so the antithesis physically of Naomi Watts. She's dark, haughty, brown eyes, incredible voluptuous body, and Naomi Watts is just sort of cute, not terribly glamorous, but cute, just, and with blonde hair and not that much of a body, but I like them both, and of course their sex scene together was absolutely wonderful to watch.
Naomi Watts was in Twin Peaks, the Return. I just realized she
plays Dougie's wife, and
yes.
Yeah, and she's also in Inland Empire playing a rabbit. But Inland Empire is going to be an interesting one to have to explain to you, because I don't know how the hell you explain this movie. It was I just to sum up Mulholland Drive, okay, is like a it's filmed from the point of view of someone who just survived a car accident and doesn't know who she is, right? But then we come to realize that it's actually Naomi Watts' character who is pulling all the strings and is manipulating the entire situation.
What I remember about the movie was it was this sort of interesting, sort of weird mystery of like what's going on, and then at the very end it gets extremely David Lynch, where it's like, what the fuck is that? Where it's like these like small people crawl out of a thing, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
That is a point that is going to lose a lot of people, is the David Lynch moment. The David Lynch moment in this movie is when they open this box and then they fall into the box. And then these little people start popping out, and the little people are Naomi Watts' relatives or something.
All I he did the David Lynch thing where it's like, you know what, I'm going to do something weird, and even I don't know what it is, but it's going to mess with people. And here it is. Maybe he didn't even know what he was doing, or maybe he did.
I think he always knows what he's doing, and I think like there's a wonderful story he tells about how he gets ideas. I'm just going to save that for the listener, for the viewer to watch. But he has a wonderful story about how he gets his ideas. It's like, and then he talks about how when you get a great idea, but then you forget what the great idea is, you want to commit suicide, because the idea is like the greatest thing ever. And that's sort of like the process when you're writing. When you're writing and you have a really great idea, but then you forget what it is. Whoa, let me tell you.
It happened to me. And I'm like, I'll remember it another time.
There are some, I've forgotten more ideas than most people can remember, but good ideas too, a lot of them. We have to talk about Inland Empire. It's a movie that I just watched, like last Thursday. I watched it
with no
for the first time. I had no idea what was going on.
What it was, with no previous knowledge of what it was or what it was about or anything, because I pretty much have none. All I know is it's weird and it's shot on video. That's all I know, and it's long.
It's not quite video. It's digital. He shot it on digital cameras like mini DV, that kind of thing. Back when the technology was still, people were still screwing around with this. This is pre-HD. And it's interesting to watch. It's a little under 3 hours. It's a lot to get into if you want to watch it. Can you find it somewhere streaming?
It's on Max. I looked up because they have like a list of David Lynch movies that they have, and they have Inland Empire, they have Dune, they have some sort of David Lynch documentary, which I think I probably already saw.
I wrote some notes. I just wrote a couple of notes when I was watching it, just to get my thoughts on paper.
What the David Lynch list is. I hope they already take it down.
Netflix isn't showing anything. Can I just point that out? They're only showing one thing that he did specifically for Netflix, which was he made a short film where he is interrogating a monkey that is accused of murder, and the monkey has his voice.
Okay, here's what we got. On Max. It's celebrating David Lynch. We got Blue Velvet, we got Inland Empire, we got David Lynch, The Art of Life. We have Eraserhead. We have
good documentary. That's a great documentary about his artwork he did after making films.
Okay, we have Eraserhead, we have Dune, and we have Twin Peaks, and the Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me, and that's it. And then of course, all the original Twin Peaks episodes I think are either on Netflix or Paramount Plus with Showtime.
They're on Paramount now. They took them off of Netflix. That was where we rediscovered Twin Peaks, because it showed up when Lynch. I guess Lynch gave them the right to show Twin Peaks episodes.
I think it was because it was part of that deal, because that way he produced. And I remember when he made Twin Peaks: The Return. If you remember the hullabaloo, he almost shut it down before they were going to shoot it, because they were like, we can't. He's like, he spaced it out. And he's like, I'm going to make 18 episodes. He made a lot of episodes for a streaming thing.
He did, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was his last recorded work, probably.
And he was like, they're like, hey, we're not gonna produce that, man. And he's like, well, then I'm not gonna do it. And then they sat down, somebody found money, and then he did it. So that was the Showtime things. That's probably part of the deal of like they had to purchase the original Twin Peaks. It's interesting. The Firewalk is, I think, independent of that deal because if I remember correctly, it was actually like produced by Aaron Spelling. It's some sort of a release.
The TV show, the first TV show, was produced by Spelling Entertainment. The movie was produced by an international consortium, Cybe 2000, and then the revival was produced by Showtime Networks with his own Propaganda Films company.
Firewalk with Me was released by like it wasn't even New Line, it was like Fine Line Pictures or something. I think that's what I remember it.
It was produced mainly with European money. I think, you know why? I think the Europeans were digging Twin Peaks before the Americans were, at least as a cult item. They really liked it that way. These are the notes that I wrote for Inland Empire.
Okay.
When I was watching it, I wrote, like Mulholland Drive, Laura Dern, lots of close shots, weird magic, Jeremy Irons, great director, Diane Ladd, Grace Zabriskie, A Woman in Trouble, only digital color. Those are the notes I wrote. It was just like sort of stream of consciousness stuff. He has some great actors in this one. Laura Dern is in it, of course. She plays a famous movie star who signs on to do a picture directed by Jeremy Irons, who plays this famous director. And she's working with Justin Theroux, who was also in Mulholland Drive, playing a director. It's interesting. But here he's playing an actor, and she has a dalliance with him. But Jeremy Irons says that this movie is cursed. And what he wants to do is actually finish this movie. Every time a director has tried to make this movie, it's been cursed. So he's trying to finish it. And at that point, Laura Dern's character slips into this thing where she becomes different parallel characters in different situations. She's married to an abusive husband. She is homeless, walking around the streets. She's hanging around with these teenage girls who keep breaking into these weird dance routines where they keep having dances, and they dance to songs like The Locomotion and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I've only watched it once. I need to watch it like 2, 3, 4, 5. It's another one. I never got into it because unfortunately at the time we were having a baby when this movie came out. This movie is exactly 18 years old, same as my daughter. So
yeah, this reminded me of that movie that I did not see with Gwyneth Paltrow, The Sliding Doors, where she's like.
But it's so, that movie is a cutesy little romantic chick flick type thing. This is not.
Like the Nicolas Cage movie, The Family Man, where he's in another. It's like this weird alternate universe of like what. Now, does she get confused every time she goes into the alternate universe, or is she just completely?
She keeps thinking. Well, when she's in a different life, she still has her brain from being an actress, so she thinks she's in a movie. So, to me, it's not like those two movies you mentioned. It's more like a Twilight Zone episode. There was a Twilight Zone episode with, I think it was Howard Duff, and he plays an actor. Working on a TV show, but then suddenly he is living the life of the person that he's playing on the TV show, and he keeps going back and forth between these two different worlds. And I think it's called A World of Difference, actually, is the name of the episode. Maybe look it up at some point and watch it. But add in all those ingredients of a kind of juicy, sexy David Lynch surrealist nightmare type situation. Like her movie for her ends when she's stabbed to death by 3 homeless women. She gets up, the director claps and says cut, and everybody applauds, and she walks off the set, and she looks at herself in the mirror, and she's still got blood stains on her head or something. So it's it's one of those things where you have to leave it up to interpretation.
Would you say this is probably David Lynch at his most experimental?
It is a complete return to Eraserhead, but you'll notice when you watched Eraserhead, it has very little dialogue. This one has a lot of dialogue. People talking, people speaking in different languages. But it is a return to experimental filmmaking. But the thing is, Twin Peaks: The Return also does that. As I said, episode 8 of Twin Peaks The Return is one of the most brilliant pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen. And it's a better movie than Oppenheimer. Look at that nuclear explosion. That explosion is so much better than anything Christopher Nolan ever did. And this is one of my problems now. Now I can talk to you about this because I've been thinking about it the whole week, and I wrote a little bit of it at the end on my page. These filmmakers have learned all the wrong lessons from great filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick and David Lynch. Now all of them think that if I just imitate these two, I'll be considered brilliant. And it seems like everything that wants to be different is just doing the same thing. They're all just imitating. They're imitating Stanley Kubrick. They're imitating David Lynch. They're imitating David Cronenberg.
I would argue that they're standing upon the shoulders of giants.
Those were the giants, though, and those shoulders. Just trying to be like them is not being the same as them.
Well, no, they have to do their own thing, too.
But they're not doing their own thing. They're just doing what has been done.
I couldn't see David Lynch making, Dark Knight Rises, Tenet.
Look at, Christopher Nolan is just doing that. That's what he's doing. They look at a movie like, Hereditary or Midsommar. They're doing the same thing that Lynch was doing. They're doing the same thing that Kubrick was doing, and they think they're being original, and they're not. It's like you look at all the stuff. You said before at the beginning that Lynch's catalog is very small.
Mm-hmm.
It's very small. And he did nothing to change or add. He believed a movie should be a product of its time. And it remains in that way, forever trapped in that time, because he never did anything to change it, to revise it. You never saw anything like a director's cut coming from David Lynch. You never did. You asked about Dune, the director's cut. There will never be a Dune director's cut because he was always moving forward. He was never looking backwards.
He came back to rectify the unfinished business of Twin Peaks. But I also think that
it doesn't change anything. It just adds to an already mythological story.
Exactly, but it's like a lot of people were like, probably come after him like, man, we love Twin Peaks. It was weird, and he was probably like, man, I wanted to do this, but ABC wouldn't let me do this, and then I tried to do Firewalk with Me, but I couldn't quite get it, and it was rushed production, and it was low budget. So it's like, it felt like, again, the Twin Peaks: The Return. I feel like he did that. He didn't have to do anything after that because I feel like that was his masterpiece because it encapsulates everything that he could do, and he had the long form to do something with. Because again, I was like, I never watched Twin Peaks, and if I'd watched it when it was on, I'd be like, what the fuck was that? And not gotten it. Whereas I watch it now,
Twin
knowing
Peaks was serious event television when it was released, when it was announced.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched it on that Sunday. It was a Sunday. It was a Sunday night, 1990, and it was watching a David Lynch film on television, but specifically for television. And it was a very special thing. It really was. It was truly amazing to watch.
But it was just too weird for the. It was like people started watching. They're like, "Oh, this is weird," and then they're like, "Oh, I gotta watch this every week. I don't know what's going on." And people give up. But like that's what's great about the way things are now is like, yes, you know what you're getting now. That's the thing of like that's what David Lynch did. You have these more sort of esoteric filmmakers. He and Kubrick, they made the path so that somebody can come in and be weird, and people will go, "Oh, it's the new weird film from the weird guy," and I will watch it, and I will sort of meditate on this. It's like it can be more long form with streaming and everything, whereas before people, like David Lynch, would make these weird movies and people be like, "What the hell? The hell was that? I don't get it." And then, Roger Ebert would be offended by something in Blue Velvet that is like, well, it's just a movie, I mean, didn't Isabella Rossellini even come out and say, I was fine. I did not feel abused at all.
She did. She, and the performance is really good. It was a good movie. I think I'm going to end it on what you just said there, because I think that's probably the best way to end this show.
Good. I'm a very profound, smart man. What can I say?